Enjoy and listen carefully. School is an 18-year forced government training program that sterilizes potential for brilliance in children. Those who actually survive schooling and survive conformity and continue on to think for themselves truly are a rare breed. All children start out as curious, highly experimental minds, and then one day they're sent to school. Mandatory schooling is never consisted of anything but the memorization of monotonous dead facts and training children to master repetitious behavior for the greater part of their day. Everything the child says must match the interest of their school teachers. Their behavior must coincide with a set policy and a set regulation. They cannot use the bathrooms without permission. If they wish to speak, they must raise their hands, and after every hour or so the teacher says we finish and everyone must move to it. It couldn't be any more slave-like, and this type of training becomes a ritual for the child. It becomes the plot background for their television shows and books, or the ideology taught to them by a teacher or a parent. An entire monoculture is being developed here, stripping children of their power to cause trouble for the state at an early age, training them to be good servants of the politically correct. Their environment is much like a prison by the population, lacking any ability to check the authority of the warden. The process becomes a matter of rubber stamping. They have no control over their entire lives, which is directly related to youth violence, because the only control they have is between each other. Mandatory schooling produces children who are either terrified of the tyranny of others or have been raised to perpetually exploit the conditions of others. It's just like the prison system. Forced cohabitation. A child's presence in certain buildings and their engagement in state-regulated behavior is under a penalty of imprisonment. An entire army of truancy officers have been hired to make sure that no child is on the other side of the bars. At the end of the 18 years of coercive state authority, the child is released into the world. It's like the end of an 18 billion year prison sentence. Now that you're trained to do as you're told to, now you can be freed. And the produce of these schools, or the state-controlled manufacturing operation, is a society willing to submit, to obey, and to listen. Forced behavior, which technically amounts of slavery, will only inculcate a mindset of fear and terror. You need to be somewhere at a set time, either at the orders of an authority or a bell. Everyone in one mass shifts to another position or another place to engage in a new activity. They're trained to not only follow instruction, but they are also trained to follow a certain behavior. Rules, regulations, and laws are set for the children. They say you cannot do this to others, you can do this to others. This is acceptable, this is not acceptable. Standards of culture, morality, and behavior are imprinted into these new young minds that are in the blossoming stages of development. Their minds are being intercepted by the state and molded to conform to state standards. The first lesson they teach you is the orders of authority. The second lesson is to work with each other to achieve the desired ends of those in control. If a group of children are taught to engage in the same behavior regardless of what they want to do, then they will never fight back as adults. And this is your group of tenants who will live in roaches and never call the health inspector. This is your group of citizens who is easily terrified by police officers into voluntarily giving up their rights. This is your group of workers who surrender their lives to the corporation who tells them how to dress, how to speak, what time to wake up, which means they essentially tell you what time to go to sleep. If the table time to wake up, this is nothing. These are the fruits of mandatory school. If we look into roots of 19th century industrialism, the Civil War demonstrated to industrialists and financiers how a standardized population trained to follow orders without significant thought could be made to function as a money tree. It's no surprise that global power and corporate wealth is based on a third-rate great educational system that works against developing individuals of true character and true intellect, because the mindless bureaucrat of the thoughtless who will follow a system without question in the pattern that our system depends on, and this is what school produces. The system is not designed to educate the public, which is why federal and state bureaucracies call the shots, not the parents, not the local school boards. Every law is harshly enforced with the maximum punishment. The tone of a principal is much like the tone of a warden. With no check on this authority, they will always have a way of using coercive ability to enforce a standard. The population's strict punishment awaits any kid who disobeys this ruling force. There is no doubt that an active student body reflects positively on school administrators. It's like factory floor men. They're fulfilling their quotas to the inspecting superintendent of the local school district. This is the reality of government training. The state doesn't care if children are homeless or on the streets or suffering from malnutrition and hunger, but the second the child fails to appear in school at the scheduled time, like a court date, the police are alerted. Until we abolish mandatory schooling, your child will be brought up as a slave so that he can accept becoming a slave later in life and adulthood. In school, children have to do whatever the teacher tells them to do, and they are not allowed to study anything they want to study. They can only do what they're told to do. They also follow a strict schedule of what they must do, and the child is conditioned to think that his greatness and excellence is graded on how well he obeys orders. In school, the right for privacy, freedom of speech, and the right to remain silent is stripped away from the student. The school system also makes the student have a desire to please the teacher for rewards like merits, approval, and praise, while those who resist are punished by criticism, hatred, and attention. School does not teach children life skills that could help him to live individually or freely, but instead of the life of a slave to the government. If school does not end, our children will be forever doomed to think this way. We must pull our children out of school. We must tell them they are being used for slaves, and school is trying to destroy their sense of life. Our children are the roots of the future, and we all take that for granted. If children were in school, they wouldn't be fighting each other. That's just another stupid lie. If we gave our children books or take them to places where they can study what they want to, such as libraries, or just let them decide for themselves, then the world will flourish in greatness and our children will be great philosophers. They can also choose to attend the teaching of fascinating studies that will teach them important life skills, such as how to build a house, only how to build a plant, a garden, or what to do in an emergency, or how to make medicine that will make the sick feel better. Children will grow up to be confident, smart, and will always know how precious life is. It is not your fault for thinking this education system was for life preparation, while really it's a brainwashing. We must get this message out there. Tell this your brothers and sisters, your parents, friends, and everyone you know. If we all unite as one against the education system, we will win. There are many reasons to choose chess. It makes kids smart, it helps kids to focus, it helps them visualize what their opponent is going to play. They have to think ahead. We are anonymous. We represent freedom. We oppose oppression. We are simply an evolution of the technological system where liberty is at risk. We are anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.